Good evening. Good evening and welcome back to part two of our series. So many of you have written in with questions and we're going to continue to answer them from week to week. So if you have any questions about what I am presenting from, what I'll be presenting from week to week, if you have any questions about how you're feeling about God and the whole idea of journeying with God, why don't you just write in? You can write in the chats across the different social media spaces. You can write directly to us from the information that is given, and I'll seek to answer those questions. I'll tell you straight up, I am not the fountain of all knowledge, and but I will seek to, as much as I can and as far as I can, I will seek to either answer your questions or guide you to someone who can guide you to some information that may go and give you a deeper understanding. This is a place of shared knowledge. This isn't a space where all knowledge resides. It's a place where we can all put our heads together and we can come to an understanding, and we can come to a place of truly seeing what it is that God is trying to say to us, and what it is that God is trying to reveal to us. So I am going to talk about why God says he exists. Why God says he exists. Almost sounds like I'm trying to explain the mind of God. But the heart of God is revealed through the biblical narrative. The biblical narrative is where we see God acting and where we see God revealing and where we see God extending deeper and yet more revealing ways in which we can understand him. And so that's where we go to in order to get the answers that we seek. One evening, my 17-year-old daughter was sitting at a table in her 4-year-old body. She was about 4 at the time. And we was having dinner and she just looked up at me and she said, "Daddy, why do I look like you?" I looked over at my wife. My wife looked over at me and I said to her, "Because I made you, baby. Because I made you." She thought about it for a while and she said, "You made me good." Believe me, my head and my chest swelled up so much I couldn't even fit in the dining room in which I was sitting. I mean, it's all in the DNA, ain't it, girl? It's all in the DNA. I'm telling you, she made me feel so good. Feel so good. I thought about that in relation to our search for meaning, because we are in a constant search. We are in a state of constant search and existential inquiry about the things that remind us that life has meaning and that ultimately there is meaning to be found in life. We as human beings are in that space where we are constantly questioning, constantly searching. And we're not doing so because we're bored. We're doing so because we realize how temporal, how fragile, and how tragically short life is, and how short life can be. It's still summer, yeah? We question because we are fragile. We question because as human beings, regardless of how great our sense of our strength and our beauty and our ingenuity is, we also know that there is more to be found beyond us. You know, as much as we think of ourselves and as greatly as we think of ourselves, we know there is life to be found beyond us, that there is meaning to be found beyond just flesh and blood. There is meaning to be found beyond this immediate world alone. Interestingly enough, the Hebrew writers, they write with this search for more in mind. They consistently, the Hebrew writer says that God has placed eternity within us, that we sense that there is a whole world of inquiry. They are constantly telling stories, therefore, that place God in direct relation to our lived human experience. And it's important that we understand that place God in direct relation to our lived experience, to our lived pain, to our sense of longed for hope and freedom and human struggle. All of the things that make us who we are and that engage our lives on a daily basis. The Hebrew writers are always placing God, the presence of God, the immediacy of God, the actions of God in direct relation to those things. The declaration that God exists and that he does so as a present and interconnected God is in direct response to our search for meaning. God says he exists. God declares he exists so that we would know who we are, so that we know who we are, not so that he knows who he is, but so that we know who we are. Who we think we are matters to God. Why we think we are matters to God. Where we find ourselves on our life's journeys, all of these things matter to God. So when God speaks of who he is in relation to who we are, he is always doing so directly and in the immediacy of our lived experience. The book of Exodus, above all other books in the Bible, depicts that, depicts it in powerful and in transformative ways. The famous story, if you've ever seen The Prince of Egypt or The Ten Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille's, or any of the religious film, the Hollywood depictions of the religious story, the famous scene of Moses at the burning bush and God's conversation with Moses is a perfect example of why God says he is. Not who, but why God says he is. As the book of Exodus begins, it does so with the Hebrew people in 400 years of slavery, 400 years of Egyptian slavery. Chapter 3 of Exodus says that they cry to God. They cry to God and they ask God to remember the promises that God had made to their forefathers. They ask God to see them and remember them. And ultimately, they are asking God to come and free them. So at the burning bush, you know, we constantly focus around God saying to Moses, go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And that's where we place focus. That's where we always place emphasis. But it's what he says to Moses beforehand that we always seem to lose. It's what he says to him beforehand. This is what God says to him. He says, Moses, I have seen my people who are in Israel, who are in Egyptian bondage. I have heard their cries. I know their suffering. I have come down. Then he said, go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And that is the most powerful statements of God, how God introduces himself to human suffering, to human journey, to human daily existence, and why God does so. He does so that the people remember who they are. The people remember their sense of value. The people remember that they are from a story older than them. The people remember that they are a part of a heritage promised to them. He does so that they do that. So everything he declares about his personal existence is so that they will remember their lived experience, and he does so in relation to lived human experience. And there is a beautiful, beautiful immediacy, and there's a beautiful intimacy about his connection to their suffering, because it says that he is a God, and he is to be known as a God who sees, who hears, who knows, and who responds. We are seen. God says he exists so that we will know that we are seen. God says he exists so that we will know that we are heard. God says that he exists so that we will know that we are known. And God says that he exists so that we know that we will be responded to. There is something powerful, something beautiful, something immediately arresting about that. We don't go out of our way to see, hear, know, and respond to people that we don't care for. We don't go out of our way to do that for people that we believe have no true meaning. We do that because those people are cared for. Those people do have meaning. Their lives do matter. Their lives do have value attached to it. That's why we do that. God did that to a group of slaves. He did that to a group of slaves. He did all of that for a group of slaves, which says between the slave who labors in the field and the king who sits on the throne, God sees and he hears and he knows and responds to all at both polar opposites and everyone within the middle. Why does God say he exists? The declaration of God that he exists is in no way divine narcissism. It is in no way divine narcissism. It is instead his response to the human search for meaning, for purpose, and identity. That's why God says. That's why God says, I see, I hear, I know, I have come down. It's like him saying, as I did to my daughter, why? Because I made you. Because I made you. And that your search for meaning is found in me. Your search for meaning has meaning to me. What is my prayer for you? My prayer is that you may not only come to the realization that there is a God of intentionality that is seeking to make himself known to you, but that intentionality may become manifested in your lived experience. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Please keep your questions coming in. Keep your responses and share. Please, if you like what we're doing, please, number one, subscribe. Subscribe to the Mount Pisgah YouTube channel. Like on the Facebook, Mount Pisgah's Facebook page, so that whenever they are coming up with these programs and the many other brilliant programs that come out of Mount Pisgah, you can be notified across your social media. And share the links. Share if the messages have value, share them across your own Facebook pages. Share them across into your Facebook stories. Share them across Instagram if you have it. Share them everywhere and anywhere that you can find it. May Green wrote in a question, and she said, the Hebrew slaves suffered for a long time. Why did it take God so long to respond and to intervene? And I have a perfect answer to that question. And the answer is, I don't know. He never told me. I'm not sure why he took that long. I'm not sure why he waited 400 years. I know that they had grown enough as a nation, and they had forgotten a lot as a group of people. I know that they were in the midst of an empire, and to free so many people in the midst of an empire was going to be something of an impossible feat. And so, well, let's do it and operate from the impossible. I know that Moses's response to God was like what? Like, how? But God's words are so significant. And I'll go back to what it was that I said. God responds to our requests and our pleads, and our pleading to understand who we are by responding to our lived experience. That's where he finds himself, because that's where we want to know that he's real. We want him to know. We want to know that he's real when we suffer. We want to know that he's real when we feel pain. We want to know that he's real in the joy and pain, sunshine and rain of life. And so that's where he chooses to step in. That's where he chooses to make himself known. So why did it take so long? I'm not sure why he took so long, why he didn't intervene. But one thing was for sure, while they may not have experienced over the 400 years or felt that they experienced that their God was with them, while they may not have experienced it time in and time out, what they did remember was that they had a God who they could call on. That remained in their spiritual DNA. And chapter 3 of Exodus says that God heard them, remembered the promises that he had made, knew that the time had come for them to be free, knew that the time in history and in their journey had come for them to be free. And the rest is the Exodus story, Somebody's asked the question, can the Bible be trusted? Can the Bible be trusted? That's an interesting question. And it's an interesting question because what people turn around and generally distrust is what one person said in one book over against what another person said. Somebody said to me once, did Moses write the book of Deuteronomy? Did he write the first 4 books of the Bible? And I'm like, well, yeah. Sorry, first 5 books of the Bible. I said, yeah. You know, so they go all the way to Deuteronomy and they talk about Moses going up into the mountain and Moses dying, and then the story continuing. And they said, well, if Moses wrote the book of the Bible, if Moses wrote Deuteronomy, how could he be writing after he's dead? You know, I said, well, good question. But could it be that he's dictating the story to somebody and that person is writing the story? And then the person who's being dictated to after he dies just continues the story? Could it be that? You know, does it have to be just Moses, him one doing it? You know, can't it follow the same pattern that we have today when people are doing biographies and autobiographies and doing stories, that somebody else is actually doing the writing and they're reciting? I think what people have problems with the Bible is those type of discrepancy. One word here, one word there. The thing that I love about the Bible and what I really know can be trusted about the Bible is the people that it depicts. The Bible is a messy story. And I think that's what people have a problem with. You know, if the Bible is such a holy book, why is there so much crime and so much hatred and genocide and all of these things? I'm like, well, because the Bible's about us. And I think that's what people sit uncomfortably with. The Bible paints too much of a realistic picture. You can read the story of the Bible, see people, how they act, their selfishness, their heart, and all the things they do, and you know that person. You maybe work with that person. You probably see that person, you know what I mean, on TV all the time. You know, that person probably lives in your house. And I think that's why people have such a massive problem with the Bible. It's not what they claim to be the historical.
Thank you for joining us this evening for Candid Conversation. If you love what you saw here tonight, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as turn on your bell notifications so that way you know every time we go live. Have any questions? Be sure to click the link in our description box and let us know your thoughts. And remember, ain't no judgment on this side. Also, be sure to like, comment, and share us on all of your social media platforms so that way your friends and family can be a part of the community as well and stay in the know of everything here at Mount Pisgah. See you next time.